Hello, I'm Helen Thorn, comedian, podcaster and author, and welcome to Weight Loss 360 with Boots Online Doctor. We're here to support you as you make the little changes that can have the big difference. And this week we're talking about weight loss and food fundamentals, taking a close look at our relationship with food. Ooh, I can't wait. As always, I'm joined by Dr. Sam Wellapili, lifestyle medicine GP, empowerment coach, nutritional and yoga therapist. Sam, hello.
Hi Helen. Welcome everybody.
And registered nurse and nutritionist Ruth Taylor.
Hi everyone. I'm really looking forward to today's episode. It's a big one. Stay tuned, everyone.
That's right. This episode is all about food fundamentals. Let's start with a quick overview of what's coming up in today's episode.
So today we're going to be thinking all about ditching the diet mentality so that we can really feel great. We want you to start thinking about the importance of balancing your blood sugar because that will really help in terms of reducing your cravings, giving you sustained energy, and also you just won't need to snack so much. We want you to start thinking about this as a way of learning to eat foods that are really nourishing for you and that you can really get to grips with and make a new relationship with, looking at the long game for sustainable long-term weight loss. So Helen, I know you've been on a really big journey with your looking at food and your health, so it'd be really interesting to hear a little bit from you about that.
Yeah, I've had, it's been a big change, really. I mean, it started 3 years ago, and I remember I had that relationship with my food where I used it to numb me, and I would eat food when I had low energy that would give me even bigger slumps. And I didn't know what impact the food was having on me. So as a sort of tired and busy mum, I'd always go for things like pasta and, quick carbs, like making myself a sandwich or thinking that to be full, that would give me the energy. But I'd be finding that I keep having these big dips afterwards and then have like some biscuits to give myself a bit of a boost. And it was a really hard cycle. But the more I learned about nutrition and started to do like little swaps, so adding in more protein in each of the 3 meals of the day and reducing the snacking, but also things like replacing brown rice with from white rice and things like that I just knew was doing me good. And I knew that I couldn't restrict any food. Like if anything was off limits, it's probably what I always wanted, So I think now I love food. I love going out. I feel confident about making choices when I'm out. And I think that's what I was really scared about. I was like, I don't want to be diet girl. Now I've learned a lot of things along the way, but I know for the listener, they want to know where to start. What are the fundamental good foods to eat?
Yeah, so what we're going to be thinking about are bringing in lots of really naturally nutritious foods, getting rid of some of those processed and ultra processed foods. I'm really thinking about making simple swaps. A bit like what you were saying, Helen, it doesn't have to be complicated. Making little swaps to begin with is going to be a really important step. So it's sort of like finding a way of eating that's long-term sustainable for you and sort of letting go of the diet rules and just learning a way of eating that's sustainable for the long term. It's really important.
And it's exhausting. I think that's the thing is like if you'll be thinking about food all the time, like I can't have this, I'm afraid to go out, or what am I going to cook tonight? Actually having that knowledge frees you up, and that makes you have better choices, really, because you kind of I know what's good for my body, and I know what makes me feel good.
It's confidence, right? It's that confidence to make those choices, like you were saying. You're not afraid of going out for dinner and making those choices that will support you on your journey, rather than the ones that might, take you off path a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely nailed it, isn't it? It's like the happy control that gives you. You can just go out, make those positive choices, enjoy food that tastes delicious, or even if you're at home, make food that tastes delicious, but actually know that you're feeding your health at the same time.
One of the things that used to scare me was being hungry. And so I used to pre-eat before I went out, because I'd be like, but what if they don't have anything? Or what if it takes like 2 hours for the thing? So that was a big thing to overcome as well. And knowing when I'm hungry or how to control hunger as well. I think that is a big fear for people.
So I think one of the important things is sort of like being safe with hunger, knowing when actually it's time to eat, when it's time to just ignore those little pangs, and that it's okay and you're going to be all right. Because I think people have lost that intuition, haven't they? So sort of rebuilding that.
I know, and some of the advice I got given was like, eat and don't eat until you're stuffed, but just wait 20 minutes. And if you're still hungry, of course, have some more food, because the signals or something from your stomach to your brain take a little while to get there. And that's what I always used to feel. It's like I go eat until I couldn't eat anymore. And then I'd feel gross. It's that horrible feeling of going to bed, with a big tummy of food, and it just has that knock-on effect. But
Sort of like overeating, but not on purpose.
Yeah, that's right.
But I think it's also about this embodied, like knowing what our body feels like when we truly do need to eat, or when, I'm a little bit hungry, maybe if I have a drink, or maybe my body's actually asking for water, and kind of getting to know ourselves, because we spend so much of our time in our heads, in our brains, in our busy brains that are brilliant, but sometimes we can lose touch with actually what does it feel like to be hungry, and actually, am I okay? Am I okay to be a little bit hungry and to wait, a little bit, to eat more slowly, to let those signals get to my brain to say, you know what, that's good. I'm good. I don't need to eat more. I'm actually really comfortable right now.
Yeah.
And sort of it's a process, and it takes a little bit of time, and it's also a case of unlearning some of those habits that we've picked up along the way.
I did want to ask you, because I'm one of those people who, I know we're going to get into snacks later, but having food next to you while you're typing or doing work, like it's like the mindless eating.
Yeah.
That you're not even registering how much you're eating. It's just like, I'm doing that to sort of just to keep myself going. And that I found I had to stop doing, because if I ate with purpose, like I eat at the kitchen table, I eat slowly.
Brilliant.
I put it in a bowl. I don't eat the pasta out of the actual pot. That's a great thing to do, isn't it? And you pre-eat before you eat. While you're making the food, you eat while you're having it, and then you eat what I used to do, all the leftovers from my children as well. So you're essentially having like almost 2 or 3 portions without really thinking about it.
It's exactly that. That mindless eating is just the worst thing for us, really, isn't it? The eating without putting any conscious thought into it can really undo all of our efforts. And if you've got those habits, we'll be picking up on habits, I think, in today's episode as well a little bit. But I think it's a really important step, is sort of like unpicking your behaviour and just thinking about, okay, gosh, okay, so I'm eating 3 times here, not just once.
Yeah.
And it's great that you had that insight, like you noticed it, and that's what we'd love for our listeners to start reflecting and noticing when they might be when you might be eating 3 times or eating the leftovers, not those habits of things like, I don't want to waste food, I don't want to throw food away, that kind of thing. And it's probably a really old pattern and something you picked up from being a kid, and has just been an ongoing thing. And the things that you mentioned there about when you're cooking for others and eating whilst you cook, and eating a meal, and then finishing off leftovers, you were certainly not alone there. That is definitely something that I know a lot of our listeners will recognise. And our food and mood diary will be really useful for that, just to bring in that. We'll make sure that there's a link in the show notes, just so that you could track what you're doing, because sometimes, like we were saying, the behaviour is automatic. We're not even thinking as we're doing it. It's a completely automatic behaviour. So bringing in a bit of mindfulness, a bit of that, I'm going to consciously go and sit down and eat my lovely meal and really enjoy it, and maybe slow down a little bit and just enjoy the flavours, the textures, and, really fully have that kind of sensual experience of eating that meal, rather than kind of, as we do, we can scoff when we're hungry, or whatever. We can eat really fast, and we kind of miss the beauty of what that meal could be. But it's not an uncommon behaviour at all, and it's something that we can really look at and become conscious of, so that we can make those changes that will really see us through.
Sam, you mentioned the food and mood diary, and now Ruth, I know you've used it a lot with the people you work with, and I have to say it was a game changer for me. Not just sort of writing down, how many nuts I ate or whatever, and that can kill your spirit. But tell us more about how powerful this is.
Yeah, it is such a fantastic tool, and it's something anyone can do at home. It's free to use and downloadable, as Sam was saying, which is great. And all you need to do is just take a little bit of time, I think. Just make a commitment that you're going to do it. Maybe set yourself up to start by doing it for a week. And initially, just jot down everything that you eat and drink, because actually the drink is just as important as the food. You know, if it's water or tea or coffee or alcohol, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Pop it on there. Try and put down some sort of like time around when you had that food. And if you've cooked from scratch, pop down the ingredients. Or if it's food that you've bought, maybe make a note of what you bought, so you've got a real clear sense. And then, you know, the other thing to do with that is perhaps to start tracking how you feel. You know, it could be that you've got some other health conditions going on, that you notice that when you eat a certain food, you're getting inflammation perhaps, or pain in a joint. So you could even start noting things down like that. But really from a mood perspective and from a how you feel, from an energy perspective, because food is such an important element of how we feel, how our energy is. So in one column, maybe note down you feel great, or that you feel that you've had a real slump in your energy, or that you've noticed a horrible pain that's recurring in your toe, or something really random like that. It doesn't matter, because this is about you and it's for you. So do that for a week, and then just take a little step back and have a look at it, and just do an overview and start sort of like picking out, okay, so I felt great. Oh, what did I eat before I felt great? Oh, okay, so I had a protein-rich breakfast, or I had some eggs, I had a snack that was nuts. Or maybe you had something to eat that actually you noticed that recurringly when you have this particular food, you perhaps feel a little less energetic. As much as you love it, you can still eat it, but you notice maybe you're getting a bit of a slump. So maybe that's the sort of foods to be thinking, okay, perhaps there's something going on here for me. Perhaps I need to really, really look at what, because I think what we want for you from this journey is to learn what foods make you feel great, what foods make you feel maybe less great, because actually this is a really important part of this journey. Because if all we focus on is weight loss, then all we're going to focus on is weight loss. Whereas if we focus on our health and how fantastic and vibrant we can feel by changing how we eat, or focusing on those great foods, then yeah, that can make such a difference.
And I think every time you make a tiny change, that's really important, because if you start, you know, if like you clear out your cupboards and you know, I'm only going to eat this, then it's going to be miserable. If the change is dramatic,
absolutely.
it's not long lasting.
Yeah.
I found in my sort of food and mood diary, which I had, it's like how I felt when I went to bed and how I felt when I woke up in the morning.
Really key points, actually, Helen. And I think if you wake up and you feel energetic, you know you're beginning to get it right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to ask you about the Boots Online Doctor Core Meal Plan. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think so many people just go, but what do I eat? You know, how do I reprogram myself? And, you know, I think it can be overwhelming just where to start. Because as you say, when you're walking through the supermarket, things blare out saying, this is healthy, this is low fat, and it's really confusing.
Yeah. So I think part of this journey, this 360 weight loss journey, this journey to better health physically and emotionally, is really, part of it is going to be getting a bit more confident with cooking at home, with what to put in your shopping trolley, being maybe a little bit more adventurous with the shopping trolley. Sometimes I'm totally guilty of this, getting stuck in a rut and putting the same things in the trolley every time, or, you know, picking up, you know, whatever's on offer, or whatever, you're rushing or you're hungry, which is the worst when you go shopping and you're hungry.
Yes, the
making
worst.
really, really bad choices. Anyway, we are going to be talking more about that, but the core meal plan is something that's actually a really useful tool, isn't it, Ruth, for our listeners to start building a healthier plate?
Yeah, it's very much based around eating a sort of cross between a low glycemic approach to eating, which means basically you're reducing those sort of highly processed starchy carbohydrates, which perhaps you get a big sugar rush from. So you feel initially great, but then you get maybe a slump in your energy, and sort of bringing in the sort of more sustainable energy carbohydrates. So you mentioned brown rice, Helen, so that'd be a really good suggestion, swap from white to brown rice. So it's sort of looking at the foods that we know have the opportunity to sustain your energy better. So we're, from a carbohydrate point of view, again, I think the key thing with the core meal plan is very much orientated around creating a sort of sustained energy, better blood sugar balance, and really getting rid of those cravings so that you feel good and you don't have to keep reaching for snacks all day long. And that's really why we created it. So it's very much sort of low glycemic, and a combination of bringing in those healthy fats, which is sort of like orientated around that Mediterranean diet, because we know there's so much research around how healthful those fats are in terms of our overall health as well as weight loss.
And can you give some quick examples about getting more protein into each of the meals? Because sometimes people don't know where to start, and not all proteins are created equal.
Yeah. So we'd really be looking at lean proteins, and that's whether you are a vegetarian, a vegan, or a omnivore, meat eater. So we'd be looking at, say, turkey or chicken, fish. Great. And fish, also the oily fish that contains those healthy fats that Ruth was mentioning earlier. We'd also be looking at tofu, at eggs, at the pulses. We've got lentils, we've got chickpeas, and these are really filling foods as well. And taking enough protein with every meal is important over the day. They really keep you, these proteins really help to keep you feeling fuller for longer, again reducing our snacking, and also really supporting our muscle mass, which we will be talking about at another point. But these are really it's something that I think surprises people actually when you say, put more protein in your diet, because of this effect of kind of supporting your blood sugar balance over the day, keeping you feeling fuller for longer, and really supporting your weight loss effort.
And maybe making sure that's one of the first things that goes on your plate. So you sort of like to want to nail your plate protein every time you have a meal. So one of the sort of like equations that we often talk about is thinking around a minimum of 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. But that is if you're just, living a normal, fairly sedentary life. You might want to be thinking even more about upping that a little bit if you're doing a lot of exercise. So it's very individual. But if protein is something you haven't really put much attention to or thought about, that's a great place to start. And then work out what that looks like for a day, and then break that down into your 2 or 3 meals, and then sort of like make sure it goes there. And also variety. We haven't talked about variety, but I think that's a really important thing to pick up as well, because each protein source brings different protein elements. They've broken down into things called amino acids. So we want variety in there too. So different sources of protein across the day is a really good idea if you can manage it. And not everyone can. Start wherever you are. I think that's the key, is we're not in competition with one another. So if protein isn't something you eat very often, or even if you're somebody who only is eating it once or twice a week, try and eat it every day to begin with, because it's got to be realistic for you as well. So
and that's it. And it's affordable. Like eggs
are great.
Yeah, a couple of boiled eggs in your salad, or having boiled eggs for breakfast, or just natural yogurt in breakfast and things like that. It's just an extra scoop is an easier, dollop it on your Weetabix or whatever. And it does make such a difference, because you don't get that 11 o'clock, which I used to say, like the biscuit rush at 11, because you'd had something, jam on toast or something like that, which has no protein whatsoever. And then you'd be like desperately sort of low energy as well. But
just in an absolute slump, and you reach for anything when you feel like that, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And then that mindless, eating at your desk happens again and again.
Yeah, but it's really looking at it objectively, not judging yourself, not criticising yourself. And I would start just where you are with whatever you're eating at the moment, whatever your food intake is like at the moment, and just look where you can make little subtle changes, because for each of us, we're starting at a different point in our journey, and it's really encouraging to have all the suggestions, but we're just doing, one or two things, making one or two small changes, and proteins are really key one that can be brought in, and that might be a pretty big change for somebody. So giving yourself some time to adjust to these changes that you're making.
Now, one of the big things that has been bandied around the last few years is carbs is the enemy. And I know we've been talking about protein, but fibre is a pretty good thing. Is that we need fibre to get things moving, don't we?
Yeah, we really do. And I guess that's a really great point to raise there, Helen. Yeah, fibre. What can I say? It's so important. And the type of fibre we would really encourage you to be thinking about is from vegetables predominantly. Obviously, we can get a little bit from starchy carbohydrates too, but let's start with the veg, which also bring carbohydrates as it happens. So when you're following the sort of core meal plan, we would be recommending to be thinking about the vegetables that are really colourful and that grow above the ground. And that's a really easy way. If you do know how food is grown, it can be easy. If you don't, then you might need to start looking at that or thinking about it. But the veg that grow above the ground are sort of less starchy. They've got less sugar in. They are naturally just really good for you. They fill you up. They're really good at feeding your gut microbiome, and we know that's really important for our health. And they're also full of lots of vitamins, minerals, and also from a blood sugar balance, which I know we're going to talk about in a minute, they are crucially important. And for your bowels as well. So,
yes, nobody wants. Yeah, constipation is miserable, as anybody has ever gone through it. And I think having that balance between the fibre and the protein.
And you'd think, I'd say half a plate of veg is really important. And again, variety. So a variety across the week. And again, we know that some people are only maybe ever in their lives eating 1 or 2 different veg, and that for some people that is their norm. So again, this isn't a competition. It's about wherever you are. And if you're that person who's really not familiar or doesn't like veg, get brave. I think we have to get brave, don't we?
Yeah.
And just try one new thing and just, make that something that you become familiar with, and then another new thing.
Okay, we've touched on blood sugar levels, but let's deep dive. Come on, Dr. Sam, tell us all about, because it's one of those things that you get told. It's like, oh, my blood sugar's up, my blood sugar's down. But let's find out more about it.
Mean?
Yeah, what does it mean? Help us.
So I think at the heart of it, blood sugar levels is it's a bit of a barometer over the day. So if you think every time you eat anything, your food is digested and the sugars or the carbohydrates are broken down, the sugars pretty much go straight to your bloodstream, and you get this big upswing in your blood sugar level. And what you can feel like at that peak is you can feel kind of wired, you can feel quite energized, and then your pancreas kicks into action and you release the hormone called insulin, which is our sugar storage but also fat storage hormone. It has other functions too, but essentially what it does is it looks to kind of stabilize that blood sugar, so you're on a nice even keel. However, for example, if all you were eating over the day was chocolate bars, you would see on your blood sugar just peaks and troughs. So you're on this blood sugar roller coaster where your bloodstream is kind of flooded with sugar, and your poor pancreas is having to work really hard to tidy it away and store it and store fat also. So you kind of don't want that, because you're going to have, along with that, you'll have those peaks and troughs. You'll have energy highs, energy lows. You'll have that sugar crash afterwards, and then that's when we get hangry, right? We're searching around, like you were saying before about those like 11sies, like, where's my biscuit? I just had jam on white bread for breakfast, and now I'm starving at 11. And you can get quite irritable. You might not be able to think so clearly or focus very well because you're hungry, because your body is saying, I need some energy because my blood sugar is low, right? So what we want to do, what we're talking about in these fundamentals, is really introducing that protein, those sort of more whole grain kind of carbs. You were talking about the brown rice, you could talk about whole grain bread, you could talk about those kind of more high fibre. So if we're talking about a lunch, say, we're talking about those vegetables that are going to give us those slow release carbohydrates plus our protein, of course, which we love. So we want to have a nice smooth curve of blood sugar over the day, so that our meals aren't causing huge ups and downs over the day, but like a gentle wave over the day, because then we see that our mood, our energy levels, our concentration and focus just stays so much more consistent. And again, this comes down to us being more self-aware, being more embodied, knowing how we're feeling. The food and mood diary can really help us here and really give us that insight and that knowledge of ourselves and how our consumption, whatever we're eating and drinking, does have an impact on how we feel over the day. Aside from weight loss, we can see ourselves just be much more kind of even-tempered, much more maybe even productive, because our energy level is more stable. It's a real game changer when we start to think about our blood sugar balance and really looking at changing to a more low glycemic, which basically means low sugar and lower carbohydrate kind of way of eating.
Very much so. I think that's such an important point. It's quite complicated to get your heads around. We do talk about this in our webinars. So we run our lifestyle medicine webinars as well. So let's talk a little bit more about insulin and insulin sensitivity, because this is a key part of weight loss. You know, we know that all the while you've got insulin bounding around, and we're producing more insulin because perhaps we're eating a lot of processed carbs, maybe a lot of sugary rich foods, or white breads, pastas, rice, biscuits, cakes, those type of foods regularly across the day. We're going to have to constantly produce more insulin, because insulin will help us store our sugars and also store fat. So it's a really important hormone, but we want to manage how much we produce. So if we start eating less of those processed foods and we switch those whole foods that you were talking about, Sam, we'll produce less insulin. So that is an absolute key element in getting your weight managed and your energy managed. I think it's really important also to say that if you are constantly producing insulin, your pancreas will start becoming sort of a little bit overworked and sort of having to produce insulin all of the time. That can lead you to a condition called insulin resistance. And we know that that is a precursor to type 2 diabetes and all sorts of inflammatory metabolic health conditions. So we know that this is something that's just really important for our health as well.
Absolutely. In the long run, this is all, things that build through our lifestyle choices. And that's what we're all about here is really, yes, we're talking about weight loss 360, but we're talking about your health. We're really talking about your whole physical health and how you can support yourself and lose weight along the way.
Right, we're going to get some good above ground veggies and protein, but what about snacking? Now we've got a message or a question here from one of our wonderful people in our community, and they want to know what are the good snacks to eat if you really are having a bit of a hanger moment or hungry moment. What should you eat?
Well, it's a great question because sometimes that is our habit. We can be real snackers over the day, and certainly not alone. But what we would really like is for us to move away from that kind of snacking and eating between meals, because that's where we can kind of go off track with our goals.
Yeah, I think also just thinking about our digestion, we need to rest to be able to digest. So if our digestion is constantly being bombarded with food, we can end up really struggling to digest the food. But I guess if you really need a snack, which in those early days or when you've had particularly long days, perhaps you've not been so able to be focused on that core way of eating, then really choose sort of almost like think of your snack as something like a mini meal. So you could have a couple of hard-boiled eggs, if you're really hungry, or even just one hard-boiled egg, or a small handful of nuts, or some nut butter with some chopped apple. That's one of my personal favourites.
And we're talking about protein things, so things like always having hummus in the fridge. You can bulk buy that. Pre-chop up your vegetables at the beginning of the week, having those. And also I found, because I've been doing a bit of exercise, making my own protein balls, which are so delicious. And it does give you that hit. You can put a bit of cocoa powder in with like your peanut butter or nut butters or whatever, and naturally sweeten with things like dates and things like that and seeds. I think, it just takes a tiny bit more effort maybe on a Sunday night going, look, I might be having a long work day, I'll put them in the freezer or whatever. And it has a huge difference, because then you're not just nipping into, the off license going, I just need 6 packet of crisps.
And I think it's mindset, isn't it? It's sort of like making sure you've got the right foods with you, because if you've got your cupboard stocked up with all the wrong foods, they're just very easy to grab, and you can find just sort of spiralling back into that old patterns of behaviour. So be prepared, I think, and go prepared with some healthy snacks.
And things that take a little while to eat as well, because I think that's the thing about the ultra processed foods, and we're going to do an episode about it. It's just so quick to consume it. Like the bread is soft, you don't even chew it. You can quickly wolf down a Jaffa cake or whatever, and before you know it, your glycemic index is off the charts. I like to have I have a big jar of nuts at home, and that's my little go-to, because I probably will, or if I have those long days. But I think that's right about resting your gut is so important, because we just think, but I'm only having a little bit, but having 2, 3, 4 hours of rest is really important.
Yeah, because think about the insulin peaks. Every time you eat something, your insulin is going to be released, and we're working that pancreas really hard. So it's nice to give the pancreas a rest and your insulin production a rest, and for you to still feel full and, have that conscious awareness about what you're eating.
So we've covered a lot in this episode, but let's all round it up. This is what I love about this podcast. We get our top tips here. Ruth, have you got a top tip to share?
Great. So I think start with the food and diary, and really just take a time to have a look at that and just take stock and use that maybe in combination with our core meal plan, just so you can really get your head around what's going to be helping you and what maybe is not helpful.
Absolutely. My top tip from this week would be all about eating that low glycemic diet and really bringing your awareness to your blood sugar over the day and how it's impacted by everything you're eating. So really thinking protein, above ground veg, making those swaps that we talked about, going to the more whole grain versions of your carbohydrates, and just a small portion. Really looking at those portion sizes over the day, and using that diary will help you really notice how you feel.
Yeah, and then I guess finally I'd say, if you make a mistake, don't look on it as a mistake. Just look on it as a learning opportunity and sort of work out what it was that triggered you to perhaps go off course, or, don't beat yourself up. This isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. And like I think you were saying the other day, Helen, is about that 80-20 rule. So it's okay to go off track every now and then. It's about getting yourself back on track.
Well, that's enough for today. Weight Loss 360 is a fresh air production with Boots Online Doctor. The producer is Ollie Seymour. We've got a bonus episode coming your way in a few days' time. Ruth will be talking to us about UPFs, that's ultra processed foods, what they are and what they do for you. And next week we'll be exploring metabolism and weight loss. Something that's really helped me on my weight loss journey was strength training and moving more throughout the day. Also looking ahead of the week and knowing what I would be triggered by to have snack times, so eating properly beforehand. I'm excited to talk more about this next week. Thanks for listening. We're here to help you on your 360-degree weight loss journey. So remember to follow Weight Loss 360 with Boots Online Doctor wherever you listen to your podcasts, so you never miss an episode. Make sure you check out Boots Online Doctor weight loss service for a whole load of other amazing advice and free resources, including weekly live webinars where experts can answer all your questions. The information shared here is evidence-based to help you achieve and maintain your weight loss. However, if you have any health concerns or questions, please consult your GP before making any changes to your diet or lifestyle. Remember, every small change is a big step towards a healthier, happier you.